I'm Eusebius McKaiser, and I'm joined in this conversation by Professor Jeffrey Sachs here at the Old Mutual Wisdom Forum. Professor Sachs, it's wonderful to have you in South Africa. When we have an amazing economics brain like yourself in the country, we love to ask for advice. South Africa tries to straddle many different fiscal objectives. We have a massive welfare state. We've got one of the highest per capita spends on education in the country. And at the same time, our economy is growing barely above 0% at the moment, and we have a Gini coefficient that is quite scary in terms of how callous it is. What do you say to South Africa as a country that desperately wants to deal with deep levels of poverty, inequality, and a lack of flourishing amongst millions of poor black South Africans in particular, and at the same time, our economy doesn't seem to be able to sustain that kind of investment in social aid and justice?
Well, I do think that that is the most important investment. In fact, if I were to list South Africa's priorities, number one would be education, number two would be education, number three would be education. And that's because the apartheid system was so not only devastatingly inhumane, but it left so many people without the basic education, basic skills that you need for a 21st century economy. This is the biggest challenge. What's notable is that South Africa needs to get results out of those investments. And right now, South Africa ranks at the bottom of the list of countries that take this international test to compare how they stand. That's not all the countries in the world, but about half the world takes the test, and South Africa's near the bottom of that. And I would say that's a signal. Keep watching that. Make sure that South Africa keeps rising in the ranks to see real performance on math, on science, on reading skills, because that is the future. There's no way to handle the underlying problems, which are a legacy of centuries, but there's no way to handle them other than through making sure that every child in this country gets a good education. It's too slow in a way, you know, that's another generation, Professor Sachs, what are you saying? But fundamentally, that is the future. And good health for every child so that they can reach their potential, and then a quality education. And I would say use every tool that you can find right now, online, connected classrooms, quality teaching, to make sure that you get exceptional educational performance. And that's what made Korea go from poverty to really high wealth in a span of 40 years. Was they rank at the top of the education system because every parent's saying, that's what I want for my kids. I want them to be in a good school with good teachers. And I think it's the priority.
As you know, none of this economic analysis makes any sense unless, of course, politicians behave.
Absolutely.
And so I want to ask you finally whether you want to venture an opinion in terms of South African state's attitude towards the global system. We have just announced to the international community we're withdrawing from the International Criminal Court. We are deeply skeptical about the United Nations that you have referenced in one of your earlier answers. And it seems as if South Africa, like many other countries in our region, are so distrustful of what the global system can deliver for us in the global south that perhaps the levels of faith about fixing the global system that you alluded to earlier is probably not a sentiment that many politicians in our region would share. Why should they share in that?
Well, I think the big challenge in my country and in South Africa is to clean up the politics inside. In my country, it's a money system, it's a corrupt politics, it's billionaires getting their way, but I'm not so sure it's so different here and in other places. And the money in politics is terrible, because then governments are not directed at education, at healthcare, at good roads. They're directed at making money and staying in power. And that is a huge problem in the United States. That's why we're broken. This election cycle will probably be a $10 billion election cycle in the United States. We're so clever, we just legalized the corruption. We said, oh, you can give money to politicians, you can pay for their campaigns, and that's legal. It should be illegal. But our Supreme Court made a terrible mistake. But I think in South Africa, there's a lot of corruption also, and this absolutely needs to be faced. So it's not so much about the international system, it's about cleaning up our own act And in the United States, it's terrible right now. And that's why everyone's disgusted in the United States, why there's such a protest, because they think these politicians are on the take, and they are. And we know it because we see the money changing hands in the US. And that has to stop. And again, you know, countries I like in Scandinavia, their campaign is short. There's not big money in politics, and the spending of the public money is really scrutinized. It's very transparent. God, if we could have that in the United States, perfect.
Professor Sachs, I'm going to sneak in a bonus question. We are seated in arguably the richest square mile in Africa. You're going to be addressing big business tonight at the Old Mutual Wisdom Forum. In a nutshell, what is the key message that you are bringing to this forum?
Well, I'm bringing the message that we need fair societies that honestly pay the taxes and governments that deliver the goods, and that if we have that, this system can work. I'm an optimist in a certain sense that we have incredible technology. I'm able to fly here, I'm able to be on social media, I'm able to be exchanging files and emails and getting my data and everything else that's needed. That's a world that can produce a lot and bring everyone along. But if business is not being responsible, if people are not paying their taxes, if government is absolutely misusing the money that they have, then this isn't going to work. So my message is that it's possible to fix these problems. That's what I deeply believe. But these are real problems and they need fixing.
Professor Sachs, thank you for being in conversation with me.
Good, thanks.
Thank you.